I think those people were treated very harshly. When you compare them to other things that took place in this country where a lot of people were killed, nobody was killed on January 6th.
Well, President-elect Trump on the campaign trail discussing the events of January 6th, 2021. We're coming up on 4 years since a peaceful rally and march to the Capitol turned into a violent clash with police outside of the halls of Congress. That clash leading to a large group of protesters flooding into the seat of America's democracy. As you can see in this specific video, many of them even led around seemingly like a tour group by Capitol Police, who were overwhelmed outside, unable to stop the breach.
Dozens of police officers and demonstrators were injured. One person, a female protester, was shot and killed while attempting to climb through a doorway that was blocked off to protect members of Congress. Windows and doors were broken. Some parts of the building were vandalized. Some items were stolen. But hundreds of people who didn't hurt anyone and didn't break anything, some who didn't even enter the Capitol, have felt the wrath of the Biden Justice Department. Many of them didn't see the violence at the front of the pack and claim they just followed demonstrators in front of them, thinking police were letting them in.
And President-elect Trump, fast forwarding here, has been hinting at pardons for some of the January 6th defendants. And after President Biden pardoned his son Hunter, Trump then took to Truth Social saying, quote, "Does the pardon given by Joe to Hunter include the J6 hostages who have now been in prison for years? Such an abuse and miscarriage of justice." January 6th is routinely referred to as an insurrection by the left and the legacy media. The DOJ has filed thousands of criminal complaints, yet only a handful are for insurrection, the charge of seditious conspiracy.
One of those defendants is former Proud Boys leader Enrique Tarrio. He was not at the Capitol that day, but prosecutors say he led, quote, "an assault from afar." Some alleged members of the Proud Boys were on the front lines of the skirmishes with police. But Enrique, who's a former FBI informant and was not even in Washington, D.C. on January 6th, was accused of organizing what the DOJ called an attempt to overthrow the government. He was sentenced to a record 22 years in prison, despite pleading guilty and pleading for leniency, saying, quote, "I'm not a political zealot. Inflicting harm or changing the results of the election was not my goal. Please show me mercy. I ask that you not take my 40s from me."
And even when he was arrested more than 2 years ago, here's the footage, authorities showing up at his home in body armor in the middle of the night with long guns drawn and cuffed him while he was half naked. This while rape and murder suspects routinely released with no bail. With that, Zuny Tarrio, that is Enrique Tarrio's mother, is joining us now, hoping President-elect Trump could pardon her son, maybe others as well. Zuny, thank you so much for taking the time for the viewers today and, again, speaking out specifically about your son. 22 years that he's received. There were negotiations to lower that sentence. Is it still at 22 years? And have you heard? Are you able to communicate with your son? Can you tell me how he's doing today?
Good morning, Sean, Emma, for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. Yes, I do communicate with Enrique whenever he's at a jail that has a good communication. Right now, he's been in transit. Enrique, a lot of people don't know, but he's been at 35 different prisons since he was taken on March 8th of 2022, and that sentencing is still at 22 years. And he was not there, as you all know. He was in Maryland. He was away from there. The trial lasted 5 difficult months for the families, and we're hoping that we're taking avenues as the appeal process goes forward. We're hoping that elected President Trump, understands the situation and all these families and all the damage that has been done to these families throughout these years.
Zuny, that seems like a lot of movement for a prisoner here. Is there any explanation as to why he's been transferred so many times?
Except for the fact that he's been paraded all that time, there is no valid explanation for that. He goes from prison to prison, and now since before November 5th, he was transferred at least 5 times, and sometimes to the same state. So that seems like a really ridiculous move, but all of this is so surreal sometimes that we don't even know. But we're hoping that things are going to get better in 2025 for all of those men that are still incarcerated with no bond and have that don't even, some of them don't even know their children. Most of them are American citizens that have been in the armed forces. It's been terrible. They've hurt not only these American patriots, but they've hurt a lot of families with giving this power to the DOJ.
Yeah, and Zuny, obviously, this may look a lot different come January 20th. The Department of Justice, who runs the Department of Justice, I know there's an appeals process happening with you in the courts as well in terms of your son, Enrique. I wanted to ask you about something that you told CBS News, that you don't believe that he had a role in the riots. The 22-year sentence is harsh, it's unfair, and I'm just quoting you here from your interview. It says, quote, you say, quote, those text messages were a lot of group of guys just talking text messages and just saying things they felt, but they never even dreamed of something like this happening, unquote. Did you want to talk to that point, and keeping in mind for the viewers that your son was not there that day? He participated in a text thread, and that's what linked him to this 22-year sentence.
Exactly. Enrique was the face of an organization. I say organization, and that's kind of funny because the Proud Boys aren't a very organized group to begin with, but there was no conspiracy. There was no plan. What the prosecution did is that they kept brainwashing those 12 jurors the whole time, the whole 5 months, showing the same videos over and over again and taking text messages out of context. And let me just tell you that a lot of those text messages that were shown in court, Enrique Tarrio did not participate or did not reply to a lot of those text messages. So again, there was no conspiracy. There was no plan for this. Was it nice? No. Nobody says January 6th. Ashley Babbitt died on January 6th, a veteran. And that was very, very horrible for her and her family. So there was no conspiracy. There was no plan. Enrique had no plans of this. And he, like I said, he was told to stay out of D.C., and he did. He stayed in Maryland. And he never said to the guys to do anything like this. And I think even if there was windows broken and fences broken and what it may be, those guys have been in jail for 4 years. I think enough is enough. And I think if President Biden is able to pardon his son Hunter, well, he should be able to pardon my son that wasn't even there. We don't know what could have happened if he was. Maybe things would have been different. But there was thousands of people there that day, not only Proud Boys.
President-elect Trump has signaled that that might be something he does once he returns to the White House, pardon those January 6th prisoners. Here's also what he had to say. Again, we're flashing back in time. This was his message to supporters, part of his message to supporters on January 6th of 21.
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
And so, Zuny, I'll ask you if you have any knowledge. Did Enrique ever encourage people to commit acts of violence that day?
Absolutely not. There was no communication. Actually, there was videos that were shown in court before January 6th explaining how they were going to get together and how peaceful everything was going to be. So there was absolutely nothing stating that Enrique asked anybody to go to the Capitol or to do anything like that. There was undercover agents infiltrated into the Proud Boys, and they never went back to their handlers or anything else saying that Enrique had a plan or had a conspiracy. There was no plan and there was no conspiracy. I can say that over and over again. I was sitting in court for 5 months.
How is it explained to you in terms of the legal process and what your son was charged with, such as conspiracy, the 22-year sentence? He wasn't there. Was on a text thread. So how is this explained to you in terms of being able to get this charge on your son and that sentencing?
Well, first of all, DOJ was given the power to do anything they wanted, and that's exactly what they did. They used his face to give him those 22 years. And we didn't have a chance. We didn't have a chance. And we see that more than ever after election. I think it was like 97% of D.C. is a Democrat. And, everybody on that jury panel was a Democrat. So we had no chance to begin with. And to top it off, Judge Kelly decided to give them terrorism enhancement, which is something that we still don't understand till this day.
Zuny, I understand, you're trying to talk to your son when you can, get in contact with him there. Has he ever expressed to you any regrets about his association with this group or what happened on January 6th?
He can't tell me what happened on January 6th because he was not on the ground. I don't think there's regrets in his part to belonging to the Proud Boys. Actually, it was an organization that helped a lot of people and defended a lot of people when they needed defending from Antifa or those who claim to be from Black Lives Matter. So I don't think there's any regrets. He's an American patriot. He believes in our Constitution, and I don't think there's any regrets on that end, but you would have to ask him.
If President-elect Trump is watching this now and perhaps watching your interview, which we do appreciate you giving to us, what would you like to tell him?
Mr. President, I want you to look at the cases, as you said you were. We know that you're a man of your word, and we are hoping that you will be able to look at Enrique Tarrio's case. The unjust that the DOJ and the Biden administration did with these men was a terrible thing for our country. It was spending money for no reason, and we hope that you keep your word and you look at these cases closely. Especially Enrique Tarrio, that was not there that day. He has been a Trump supporter this whole time, and I think you know that.
That is the mother of Enrique Tarrio, charged with seditious conspiracy, serving a 22-year sentence, still attempting an appeal there, but moved around, swapping, transporting from prison to prison, as you noted there, dozens of times, not really notating as to why that happened. Again, still behind bars, even 4 years later. That is the mother, Zuny Tarrio, of Enrique Tarrio, joining us with that. Thank you, Zuny. We appreciate your time, and we wish you the best.
Thank you both.
Thank
you both for having me on. We really appreciate that.
You're welcome. A fascinating conversation there. Clearly, it's a mother who wants her son to have his case relooked at again. And might I note, and I'm sure our viewers are aware, that's probably a conversation that you won't see on many other networks.
No, some are fearful to tackle that subject matter. Some are fearful to talk about January 6th or to talk about anyone associated with that. But if no one speaks up in terms of there are people that obviously did some very, very bad things that day, broke the law that day, paying for it. And you're looking at this case, we're not legal experts, we're not here, we don't pretend to be, but we do recognize that 22 years behind bars, transferred 45 different prisons, according to his mother there, on a charge of the seditious conspiracy, without even being there, and linking it again to text messaging. When we see, even in New York City, murderers, rapists somehow getting out or only serving 15 years and then they're out, it just doesn't add up. But again, the point was made by Zuny in terms of reaching out to President-elect Donald Trump to look at this, as he has so promised that he would, on social media.
Yeah, especially following the news of the Hunter Biden pardon. Could we see additional pardons come out for January 6 prisoners?